The first few years of a child's life are very critical. This is where they get introduced to the world, they get introduced to the society's culture, and they learn about their environments. In the traditional African societies, we knew this, and that is why during this period, we tried to introduce children to their environments through very many creative ways. One of these ways was through the use of riddles. In this video, we are going to talk about riddles. We'll talk about what riddles are, their characteristics, the stages in a riddling process, and also we're going to look at the purposes or the functions of riddles. A riddle can be thought of as a puzzle, something to be deciphered. So it can be in form of a statement, it can be in form of a narrative, a very short narrative that tells us about a scenario. It can also be in terms of an object that's supposed to be unraveled. Therefore, a riddle needs to be deciphered or to be unraveled or to be solved. A riddle also has two sets of participants. The first person is called the challenger, the person who poses the riddle, and then the other group is known as the respondent or respondents. A riddle also has some openings to signify to the audience that the riddle is now starting, and this one varies from community to community. Like in Kiswahili, they are going to say kitendawili. That is their hint that tells us that the riddling session is beginning. Let us now look at the features of riddles. First is the performance aspect. A riddle deals in the interaction between the challenger and the respondent. So they're going to say something like riddle, riddle. The respondents are going to respond like riddle come. That performative aspect is a very important feature in riddles. Riddles are also relatively brief. One of the reasons this is the case is that when you're trying to give someone a scenario to solve, if it is very long, then it is going to be too complicated and they're going to forget the little aspects of it. So the shorter the riddle, the more effective it is. Riddles also show repetition. This repetition is supposed to be used so that aspects of the riddle are emphasized, so that these kind of images are brought to life. So repetition is a very important feature of riddles. Riddles also make use of ideophones. And we said that ideophones are words that imitate sounds. They are words that are made up. They are not part of the vocabulary of the language, but they are made up so that they can imitate sounds. This is very important because the image, the sound image, is really enhanced. Riddles also have this feature of metaphors, and a metaphor is where we compare two different objects directly, so without the use of as or like. And so one thing stands for the other in some way. You can say someone is a lion or a lion came here. So a lion doesn't have to be really the real lion, but it can stand for something else. So metaphors are very important, very prevalent in riddles. These images are very important because they make the audience to think, to make connections between different things. Some riddles have the sound device of alliteration, and alliteration is where we have the initial consonant sound repeated in words that are close. So this is very important because one, it makes the riddle interesting but also memorable in some way. Riddles also make use of personification, and personification is where we give inanimate objects the qualities of human beings. So look at these riddles from The Hobbit and see the personification in them. You can attempt to solve them. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you the solution to them. So those are some of the features of riddles. Let us now look at the steps in a riddling session. A riddling session has steps that it follows, and these steps are given names. Picture a situation in the African village where we don't have TVs or Netflix or anything. It's in the evening, people want to tell stories, but before we tell these stories, someone tells us a riddle. How does this person begin the riddle? The first step in a riddling session is called the challenge. This is where the challenger tells the audience that, hey, I want to give you a riddle. So a challenger can say something like, riddle, riddle. That one is the first step that we call the challenge. After saying that, the audience, of course, will accept the challenge and they will say something like, riddle come. That is the second step of the riddling session. The first step is the challenge. The second step is the acceptance. The audience is saying that, hey, bring it on, we're ready. After that, the challenger gives the riddle itself. The challenger poses the riddle. So the third step is the riddle. The challenger can say something like, my house has no door. That is the riddle, the third step. The next step is going to be done by the respondents, the audience. After being given the riddle, they're going to attempt to solve the riddle. So we're going to say attempts. That is the fourth step, the attempt. Someone can say, hey, that is a stone. The other person can say, oh, that is a river, or whatever they come up with. Those are the attempts. A good riddle should not be solved at this point, because the beauty of the riddling session is the attempts and the failure to solve the situation. So the respondents will try, and if they fail, which they should do if the riddle is good, then the challenger is going to tell them that if you want me to give you the solution, I want a present or a prize. So the fifth step in the riddling session is the prize. The prize is something hypothetical. The audience can tell the challenger that, hey, we give you a town, such a beautiful town, or we give you this forest, or we give you this piece of land. If the challenger is impressed, then they're going to give the solution. So the last step in the riddling session is the solution. Let us go through the steps again. The first step is the challenge. The second step is the acceptance. The third is the riddle itself. The fourth is the attempt. The fifth is the prize that is given to the challenger. And the sixth is the solution. Let us now talk about the functions of riddles. Riddles play a very important role in the society. First, riddles enhance creativity. The children were not just supposed to regurgitate riddles that they had had. They're supposed to also use those kind of elements to form their own riddles. That way, they become creative. Riddles are also a form of entertainment. As I said, think about life without Netflix. So this is where we get our entertainment from. The third function is that riddles sharpen our imagination. When someone tells you about my house has no door, or my sister cooks better than your mother, then you're starting to think, oh, who could this sister be? Or then you realize that maybe it could be a bee that makes honey. So these kind of things enhance our creativity. And when a child is brought up in a creative environment, then they can be good at solving problems. Riddles also enhance our confidence and improve our oratory skills. Confidence in the sense that for you to stand up and say, I have a riddle, you need to actually master a lot of confidence and you need to sharpen it. So that is one thing that riddles did. Also to improve our oratory skills. When you talk and you create stories and scenarios, then you become a better orator. Riddles also perform a very important function. This is oral literature, and the aspect of community in the traditional African society is really emphasized. So when children come together for a riddling session, there are bonds that are formed. It is a social kind of environment. So riddles also are used for socialization. As we've seen, riddles are very important. They create an avenue for creativity, for entertainment, and many other functions. Now take a look at the solutions to the riddles that I had posed earlier.